recorded now. We have it recorded. So a reminder, on the 15th of March, your next speech is due. It is the informative speech. And we'll be talking more about that as we go through each section of the course here. So please get those in. If you haven't handed your speech in yet, you definitely need to do that. There's just a few in this class who haven't. Most have done it, and that's excellent. So thank you for getting those in. Today, we're going to talk about another very important topic. It is called, I've entitled it, The Other Speech, The Other Message, excuse me. And we're talking about nonverbals. And there are different ways we do that. We'll be looking at that, your tone of voice, etc., your hand gestures and so forth. And the symbol on this PowerPoint, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good. I just want to make sure you can see that. The hand like this in North America, it means okay, you got it. So some do a thumbs up, some cultures that's not appropriate. Some cultures it's fine, it means okay. Well, this one is also saying okay. So for instance, I had in my last class that I just finished teaching, I have a student that does scuba diving, and they can't talk because they got their masks on and their oxygen connected to the mouth. And when they want to convey that everything's okay underwater, they go like this. That means everything's okay. And that, so we use gestures in more than one setting, and that was a particular setting that was used. So be aware that the other message is an important area to be looked at. Huge area, major area to be looked at. There are three parts involving in a speech: words and our physical person, our body language, and our paralanguage issues, our tone of voice, etc. We'll be looking at all those areas in a little bit here. And so we just need to be aware that the other message is the message we give that isn't our words. So we have to think about the fact that when we're standing in front of an audience, the total person of who we are becomes the message. Okay, the total of who we are becomes the message, and people create perceptions of you, not just based on your words, but based on the total person that's making the speech. Your body language, your tone of voice, and so forth. Those factors all come to bear in regard to impacting people regarding a speech that you're giving. So we need to give consideration to these areas here. The other message is critically important. I'm going to show you a picture. I'm going to show you a picture right now. I'm going to put it up for 3 seconds. And I want you to write down on a piece of paper. I want you to have it in your mind, because I'm going to actually ask you what it is that you see. I'm only going to ask a few of you to answer it. So be ready. Have your speaker ready to be turned on in just a second, because I'm going to ask you, what did you see? In fact, I'll only ask about 4 or 5 of you. I'm going to put it up for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and then I'm going to take it away. Here it is. Oops, come on. There. Here it is. Okay. You saw that? Be sure to put your, take mute off if I call your name. Okay? So here I'm going to ask, Abner, what did you see in that picture? I'll show it one more time. Abner, what did you see?
2 people.
Oh, Good observation. Two people. Excellent. Let's ask somebody else. Lute, what did you see? Lute, are you there? Marianne, what did you see? Take mute off.
Actually, I saw two individuals in front of each other.
Okay, good. No, that's great. I'm glad you saw that. Davis, what did you see? There it is. Whoops. There it is again. What did you see? Davis, are you here? Okay. Ivy, what did you see?
I see a chestnut.
You see, I'm sorry, see a what?
Chestnut.
A chess man. Excellent. Are you talking about the castle in chess?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. Great. Amanda, what did you see?
Is it a metaphor?
Pardon, Amanda Fang, what did you see?
Yeah. Glass.
A glass. Excellent. Look at the things you saw. So I'm putting it back up here. You're right. There are two faces facing each other. You're right. It does have the shape of a chess man, the castle. And yes, it is a vase or a vase. Okay, so it's a vase. It's two people face to face. It's a chess man. Any number of those sorts of things are, in fact, what they are. The power of perception. You need to understand that when you are speaking, people are not just listening to your words. A speech is not just words. A speech involves more than just words. It involves what people are observing of you physically as you speak and as they listen to you, not just your words, but your tone of voice and other factors related to that. Perception, remember I told you the power of perception, I told you that is the single most important issue in public speaking. How your audience perceives you. And you want them to perceive you in a positive way because you want to have impact on them as you are speaking. You want to make a difference in their lives. Now we need to understand that perception is impacted by three dimensional realities of communication, and it impacts perception. There's the language, the issue of words. There is the paralanguage, the tone of voice. And there's the physical, the body language. And all three of these work together to create, excuse me, that creates a sense of a total speech. See, a speech is that circle, the whole circle that you see there. It's made up of words, it's made up of body language, and it's made up of tone of voice. All three of these work together. Now, there are those that argue, and I've rounded out the percentages, that when you think of a total speech, that the words make up really impact, not impact, but the total of what a speech is, 10% are words. Are they important? Of course they are important. In fact, I'm going to show you, I think words are the most important. And 40% is tone of voice. And we're going to look at that in a few moments. That's 50%. And 50%, the other 50% is body language. So if you think I'm just going to get up, I'm going to write out a speech, I'm going to hold it up in a hand, and I'm just going to read it like this. The reality that your words will not have the full impact when you don't consider tone of voice and body language. these three factors work together to create this thing we call a speech, a message. So when you speak, your words are critically important. I'm going to show how important in a moment. Your tone of voice is absolutely necessary, and your body language speaks volumes. All three of these things are so necessary, so important to impacting an audience as you give a speech. So be aware. They're necessary, they're important. And you cannot ignore any one of these three and have a solid speech. You must take them all seriously. So let's look at those three areas a little bit more. I'm going to show something here. I'm going to show a diamond ring. That is not my wife's diamond ring. I do not make that much money. I do have a nice ring that I bought her over 50 years ago. And I actually, the day I bought the ring, I actually wasn't going to buy a ring. I wasn't even thinking about a ring. Joanne, my wife, we weren't married yet. She'd gone with her parents to a wedding in another part of Alberta. And then an uncle and then an aunt who married into the family, getting married that day, and she was a part of the wedding. And while she was gone, I decided I was going to go shopping at a mall in Calgary, Chinook Ridge Mall. And so I went, but before I went, my sister, one of my sisters, the oldest sister, who's younger than me, but next to me in age, said, "Hey, can I come along?" I said, "Sure, let's go." So she went shopping with me, and I went shopping for a red, white, and blue tie. I do not know why, but back then, I guess I liked ties. I hate ties now. I don't wear ties, but I did then. So we went shopping for a tie. Never did buy a tie that day. And we were going through the mall. Finally, we went out to the general area with all the stores in different places. And we were walking along, and my sister, who was with me, says, "Hey, why don't we go into that store?" She pointed up at one, and I looked at it and said, "That's a jewelry store. Why do you want to go in the jewelry store?" She said, "Well, why don't we go look for an engagement ring for Joanne?" And I said, "An engagement ring for Joanne?" She said, "Well, yes, you are going to marry her, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, why don't we go look for a ring?" I said, "Okay." So we went into the store, and she was trying on rings, and then there's this one ring, and she said, "Oh, Curtis, oh, this is the one." I said, "It is?" She said, "Oh, yes, this is the right ring." I said, "Okay." And so I bought the ring. And that was in about May, and I didn't give the ring to Joanne till December. In fact, we got engaged started on this Christmas Day, December, and I finished asking on Boxing Day. So it was at midnight. And I did that because the symbolism of Christmas Day was important to me. But then her parents' anniversary for wedding was on Boxing Day, or the day after Christmas. And so we kind of put the 2 days together, that moment between Christmas and Boxing Day, the 25th and the 26th of December. And I asked her, and she said yes. And I put the ring on her. Been wearing that ring, and I've been wearing my ring, which I have on my finger here when I got married. Been wearing this for just over 50 years now. Well, that ring looks very different than this ring. But I want to use this ring, or it doesn't matter, any engagement ring, to make a point. So first of all, I want us to see that when you look at this ring, you see the diamond ring, and I'm not talking about the diamonds on the side. I'm talking about the middle part, that diamond ring there. Think of that in a speech as the words. Think about that as the words. The setting. of the ring. You see the diamonds on the side and all that helps you look at the diamond. That is the setting. Every diamond ring has its own unique setting. Then there's the shape. It's round. The physical side, it's made out of gold. So you have these three parts. You have the diamond, which are the words, the setting, which is the paralanguage, the shape, which represents the physical factors in giving a speech. They all work together. Why do I share this? I want to go back here to what I was sharing before. Words make up 10% of a total message. Tone of voice, 40%. Body language, 50%. And I might have asked you, so what's most important? And somebody might say, well, 50%, because that must mean the most important because it's a body language, it's 50%. Others might think tone of voice. Others say, well, how could we call words the most important when it only makes up 10%? Well, let's go back to the diamond. Let's go back to that diamond ring now. The diamond ring. What's the most important part of a diamond ring? I can tell you, I have seen it over and over again. A young man asks, or may not be so young, man asks a woman, proposes marriage. She says yes. Some traditions, you have to ask the parents' permission first. And when he proposes and she says yes, he has a diamond ring and he puts it on her ring finger of the left hand. Then something happens. Maybe not right away, but she goes to tell her friends, look, I'm engaged. And all her friends, girls, gals, women, all go, let me look at the ring. And they get all excited. And you know, I've watched this happen. Do you know what I've never seen? I've never seen a woman, a friend who's looking at a diamond ring go, oh, look how round it is. Oh, is that nice and round? It's gold. Isn't that beautiful gold? It's so round. They're not talking about the shape of the ring at all. No, they're not talking about the shape, the physical. They're not talking about the paralanguage. They're not talking about the setting. Like, oh my goodness, I love the setting of your ring. It's the most beautiful part of your ring. Oh, it's round and it's gold. And I like the way that it moves in and out there. Oh, it's so beautiful. I don't hear women say that. You know what I hear them saying? Oh, look at the diamond. In public speaking, your words are what needs to stand out. And what helps your words stand out are the paralanguage and the physical. The paralanguage and the physical, which is a critical, important part of the speech, isn't there for the setting nor the shape. It is there to help us focus on the words. The words are the most important part of a speech. Now, the fact is that our nonverbal language, I'm just checking here. I think somebody just popped in here.
Yeah, sorry, sir. My internet wasn't working, and yeah, I
That's
just
good. That's
popped into
okay.
class.
I gotcha. You're here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hey, now the fact is, and we're talking about nonverbal communication. I'm just going to go back here and show you all my PowerPoints here. Just whoops. Just so you can see the other message. We looked at what you can see. You can see two faces or a vase or a player in a chess game. And then we talked about the three parts that are critical in developing perception on a speech. The body language, the tone of voice, and the words. Words only make up 10%. Tone of voice, 40%. Body language, 50%. Yet I'm suggesting that the diamond of a diamond ring, which represents the words, which is the smallest part of a diamond ring, is the most important. And that's what people focus on. Setting is critical, paralanguage. Shape is critical and necessary. But both the shape and the setting is there to help highlight the words. The fact is that our nonverbal cues speak louder and are less controllable than our tongue. The fact is that our nonverbal cues speak so loudly, but they're less controllable than our tongue. We can control our tongue. We can say, I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to say that, and not say it. But people are watching you as you speak. They're watching your eyes, your gestures, your facial expressions, everything about you. And they speak louder and are less controllable than your tongue. People are constantly aware of you. I mean, look at that picture. It's a man and a woman sitting on a bench. And right now, something's not right. Look at her fist up on her forehead. It's not soft, it's tight. It's aggressive. Look at her other hand and arm going around to gripping a hold of her leg. That's a very strong defensive position. He just said something and he has the look of, I don't know what I said. I didn't mean to say whatever I said that was wrong to say. I said it. Why are women like this? I don't understand. And she's thinking, why are men like this? There's tension in this picture. They're not all sitting there looking serene. They're not sitting there feeling comfortable. They're sitting there because there's a tension between the two of them that's happening right now. When we speak, we need to understand that people read our non-verbals. They're interpreting us. We might be feeling really good when we're speaking, but our non-verbals might be almost saying something else. We have to think about what is our face saying, what are our eyes saying, what are our hands saying. They're critical to communication. And this gal is certainly communicating something. And he's trying to figure out, what did I do wrong? We can improve our ability to send and interpret correctly nonverbal cues. Holding of the hand in a gentle way conveys something. And people then interpret from the way you hold their hand, your thought about them. This looks like a man's hand and a woman's hand. And he is holding her hand in a way that says, I'm here to protect you. And she's holding his hand in, and I will support you and protect you. We can improve our ability to send and interpret correctly nonverbal cues. And we send them all the time. And we need to understand that we need to be able to interpret other people's cues. People are watching you all the time you speak. They're not just sitting there saying, everything you say, that is all I am focused on. That's just not true. People are focused on your body language and they're focused on your tones of your voice and what your voice is doing. While sending a message with intention, and that's usually what happens, we send a message with intention. There's a purpose for your speech. It has intention. I'm here to inform people about. I'm here to entertain people because. I'm here to persuade people to consider. Those are intentions. They're purposes. And when that happens, we most often send nonverbal messages without an awareness of doing so. You cannot not communicate. Let me say that again. It's a double negative making a point. You cannot not communicate. What am I saying? You're always communicating, whether you mean to or not. If you fold your hands like this and say, I refuse to be involved, I refuse to communicate anything, you're communicating something. It's going on all the time. And without us realizing, when we are not thinking, we're sending a nonverbal message. And we're not always aware of it. I have come home from, like, just right below me is our garage. And I usually park my car in the garage and shut the door, and I'll come walking in. Haven't been able to do this for a while because we're in COVID. And so I have to speak from here. I'm used to being in the classroom. Sometimes I go to some pretty tough meetings, not at the university, but at other settings, consulting with organizations who are having tension. And sometimes I will come home and my wife, Joanne, will look at me coming through the door and say, what's wrong? I haven't said anything verbally. I haven't said, boy, something's terribly wrong. Really difficult moment in my life right now. I haven't said a single thing verbally. I walk in, she says, what's wrong? Why? She's reading my nonverbal communication. She's reading my facial and my body language. And she recognizes immediately something's not right, really fast. While sending a message with intention. We most often send nonverbal messages without an awareness of doing so. The critical issue here is, whatever you're talking about, your nonverbal language needs to line up with your verbal language. I mean, if you're trying to tell a group of people that you really love them, and that's your message, I love you, but you say, I love you, or I love you, you're conveying something very different. We have to be aware that our nonverbal, our facial expressions, our tone of voice are as critical as the words we say. And when we're public speaking, you need to understand you are the message. It's not just your words on a piece of paper. Don't just read them because you're conveying something. You need to be looking at your audience also. You need to know your message forward and backward so you're able to look at them and smile and talk to them forthrightly. Nonverbal communication tends to be more obscure than verbal communication. If I say, I love you, and you're listening to me carefully, you got the message, I love you. But if I say, I love you, but I say it like this, I love you, now you're confused. Message is verbal is, I love you, but my body language says, I'm being sarcastic. Don't trust what I just said. So we need to be aware, nonverbal communication tends to be much more obscure than our verbal communication. And people are sitting there and they're trying to interpret what we're really saying, what we are really meaning. And this picture here is a person looking down. And what are they conveying? Are they just thinking? Are they tired? Are they angry? Are they confused? What's happening? It becomes very, very difficult to interpret that. Nonverbal cues are best at building and indicating relationships. Nonverbal cues are best at building and indicating relationships. Have you ever looked at somebody and you immediately liked the person? Why did you like them? Something was happening. Was it a smile? Was it the fact that they looked you in the eyes and that's an acknowledgement that you exist? Is it a way they waved you to come on over to join the people you're talking to? All those nonverbal cues are critical and necessary in building a relationship. And they indicate what type of relationship there will be involved. The power of nonverbal communication cannot be overemphasized. They're so important. People tend to believe what they see before what they hear. People tend to believe what they see before they believe what they hear. You need to be aware of that. It's very, very powerful. These people here, a man and a woman, and they both have tense faces, and they're staring at each other. They're not saying to each other with their nonverbal language, I like you. They're not saying, I love you. They're not saying, did you have a nice day? No, they're saying, you are not in charge, I am. They're both saying that to each other with their non-verbal body language. They're staring each other down. It's a power position. You will not control me. Yeah, you will not control me. People tend to believe what they see before what they hear. Here's a great example of this. I teach another course called Introduction to Communication. Some of you, I'm just looking here, may have been in my class. I don't think so though, because I think I don't know if UA, some of you may have been in the class. If you were, you'll remember that we had a course pack. There were about 9 chapters you had to read. And then one of them was written by a detective. Excuse me. He worked for the FBI. And his specialization was nonverbal communication. He interpreted body language. He tells the story how one day he was with 2 other FBI agents in Nebraska in a cornfield. He was walking behind as these other 2 FBI officers were interviewing this man of interest. They thought he might be the person who did the crime. And they were talking away, going down the pathway in the cornfields, and the man who wrote the book he's walking behind, and finally he said out loud to the man that they were thinking might have done the murder, "Excuse me, where do you live from here?" And the man said, "Oh, I live over in that direction. If you can see my hand, over to the right." I said, "Fine." They continued walking. After a while, the same man who wrote the book said to the man they were suspicious of, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. Where do you say you live?" The guy says, "I live over there." He used his right hand. "I live over there." "Oh, yes, of course." Kept walking. Finally, the FBI officers said to the man, "Well, thank you for your time. We got to head back." The guy said, "Okay, bye." And as the 3 FBI officers are walking back, the 2 of them who did the interview with the man said to the man who was just watching and asking that one question twice, "So what do you think? Do you think he could be the person that committed the crime?" And the FBI officer said, "Yes, not only do I think he could have, I'm convinced he did." And the other 2 officers said, "Where did you get that from?" He said, "Very simple." He said, "I asked the man 2 times, where does he live? And in both times he pointed over to the right, but I knew he didn't live over towards the right. The fact is, he lived over towards the left. And I did that to test where his brain was. His brain, it seems, was focused on where the crime took place, which in fact was over to the right." People tend to believe what they see before what they hear. He said, "I saw him point to the right, but I knew he lived to the left." So we need to be aware. People tend to believe what they see before they hear. So when you're standing in front of a crowd and you say, I'm such a happy person, and they're looking at you, but your face is sour looking, they don't believe you. If you want to be in sales and you say, I know this is the best product, whatever, people are saying, ah, do you really mean that? See, they believe what they see. Are you just there to get a sale, or are you interested in the customer's well-being? And that's important. People tend to believe what they see. When you're a public speaker, people are watching you and they believe what they see in you. You need to be aware the whole time that they're paying attention to what they are seeing. So be aware of that. Now, let's break this down. Let's talk about the paralanguage issues. Remember, there are 3 parts. Words, we're going to look at words later. 10%, yet the most important part of a speech. The nonverbal, 40%, really obviously important. 40% of a speech is being impacted by the nonverbals. And in the next speech that you give, you will be evaluated in all 7 of these areas. I will be sending you the evaluation form shortly. And we will go through, I will go through as I'm watching your speech, and I will evaluate these 7 areas. There's 30 areas that I evaluate, about 30 areas that I evaluate. 5 for the introduction, 4 for the conclusion, 7 for the nonverbal paralanguage issues. These ones right here. Okay, so let's talk about these. Rate. Rate has to deal with the speed by which you speak. It's the number of words coming out of your mouth in a minute. How many words per minute are you speaking? I remember earlier I talked to you about this. I said, if you're with friends, you're probably, unless you're telling a story, but if you're just sitting and talking away, you're talking about anywhere from 75, 80 to about 100, 105, 110 words a minute-ish, somewhere in that time frame. If you are giving a speech that's informative, you're speaking at somewhere around 115 to about 135, 140-ish words a minute, maybe even slightly faster. If you're giving a persuasive speech, you are speaking at about 140 to anywhere up to 170, 190 words a minute, much faster. Your rate of speed will be different based on your audience. If it's a bunch of friends just sitting around talking, your rate slows down, unless you're telling a story or something of that nature. Then you speed up as you're speaking, sharing the story. And so your rate's important. So if I say to you, you need to speed up, I'm saying that your speech is probably a little slow for the content. For instance, if you are giving statistics, you do need to slow down. Why? There's lots of rates that you're speaking about. There's lots of information that you're giving. That's like 20% this and 16% that and so forth. Those numbers go right on by people unless you have a visual that you use and you slow down so they can capture what you're saying. So we change based on our situation. So statistics, you slow down. If you're telling a story, you can speed up. Because in the mind of people, you're creating an imagery. In a sense, their mind becomes their television. As you're telling the story, they're creating the picture of what the people look like and what the people were doing when whatever happened in the story happened. Rate's important. So you need to think about that. It's not the only important part. So are pauses. Pauses need to be there. Pauses need to be purposeful, meaningful, strategical. To pause for a moment when you simply say to people, I hope you understood what I just said. Pause, pause. Now let's move to the next area that's equally as important. Something like that, that short pause allows their mind to stop for that one split moment and then move on. but you don't allow pauses to say, okay, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? Oh boy, I got to look at this. What am I going to say next? Oh yes. Oh yes. And you're not saying it out loud. You're just in your mind saying, what am I going to say this or this? You know it. And you do it. Because unnecessary pauses create tension within the audience. Do you know where you are? Do you know what you're speaking about? Can I trust you? So one must be careful with pauses. Volume. Volume deals with the loudness by which you speak. It's the projection of your voice. When you speak, speak from diaphragm, speak from your chest, and speak out. Do not just speak from your throat, because after a while, it will get sore. It will get harsh. If you're projecting your voice from up here, at the end of your speech, you probably will feel the effects of it. Volume is critical. It's necessary. You need to make it so it's comfortable for your audience to be able to understand and hear what comfortably. For instance, if you're going to say something with a whisper, and he said this as a whisper, you don't go, nobody can hear you. But you have to create the image of whispering. So it's important for you to listen carefully. That's whispering. But I'm still projecting a voice for people to hear. I was sharing this whole area in a class a number of years ago. In fact, it was at Oregon State University, how important it was. And I evaluated this one gal and I said, you need to project, you need more projection of your voice. And greater volume. So she got up front, and for 7 or 8 minutes, somewhere in that time frame, she shouted at us the whole time. She never broke down. She just kept speaking it louder and louder, and we just kept pushing our heads back further and further. It was just overwhelming, and she spoke like that the whole time. She never once broke from that level of volume. She had really good fluency as she was speaking, but she spoke so loud. And when she stopped, we all went, oh, precious quietness. Oh, thank you. You're not shouting at people. You're speaking in a way that projects volume so that people can listen easily, and then also creates tension when you use it at different levels as you're speaking. Rate how fast the words are coming. Pauses. Intentional moments that brings impact. Volume. The loudness, the softness that you use. And there's a place for softness when you use volume. Enunciation. Enunciation is the forming of the word completely as you say it. If you were to say that you're going to be going out for a walk, but you say this, I'm going out for a walk. The word going is not going. And you need to say that word correctly. I'm going to leave now, not I'm going to leave now. Saying the words completely are necessary. I was teaching at Oregon State University, and I was talking to my students about this, and I pointed out that several people in the room were from different parts of the United States. Their culture, they're used to being able to say words without saying the whole word. Instead of saying, I'm going out shopping, you say, I'm going out shopping. And that's not forming the words. That's not enunciating the words completely. I was working on a class at Oregon State on this and talking about it. And finally, a student who was irritated at me said, where are you from? I said, well, where do you think I'm from? And they started guessing all in the northern parts, on the East Coast and on the West Coast. They didn't go to the southern part of the states because some of those places, they just don't pronounce their words completely. Said, I'm not from any one of those places. And they all looked at me and they said, well, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Canada, from British Columbia. And one of them said, "Oh, brother, if that's what makes everything now make sense, you're not a Yankee, you're a Canuck. You people always pronounce your words more fully." It's what we're needing to do as a public speaker, saying the words completely. Fluency. It's the flow of words coming out of your mouth without the and, ums, the ahs. It's so good to be with you today to share with you about sharing about my biggest happy moment of my life. It's terrible fluency. What's necessary is to be able to say the words, to allow the words to flow without those unnecessary, and sometimes even I do them, I don't question that, but to eliminate them is the idea. Rate, pauses, volume, enunciation, fluency. Vocal variety. Vocal variety involves the capacity to demonstrate and express emotion. It's, you know, if it's happy, if it's sad, if it's laughter, whatever it is, it's using that variety, and it creates a movement, and the audience more likely are going to be listening to you because you use these different voices to express things. Pitch is a very close twin to vocal variety. Pitch is the highs and the lows of your speaking. It's not doing this. Today it is my turn to speak, and I am glad that you are here to listen to my speech. I hope you will be encouraged how important it is to be able to give your speech with a sense of confidence. And so I am going to demonstrate to you what to do to really give people a sense of well-being. Whoa, man, I'm almost putting myself to sleep, speaking that way. See, pitch has the ideas. You know what? I'm speaking here today about a topic so critical. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're listening, because every single one of these factors are so critical. Rate, the speed you speak, pauses, those intentional moments where the audience captures what you're saying. Got it? Pause. Okay. Volume is a pronunciation, is the expansion of your lungs and sharing with a fullness the words so people can easily hear you from the furthest away. Enunciation, saying each word with concise and clarity. Fluency is the capacity to be able to keep speaking without a bunch of and, ums, ers, ums involved in it. Vocal variety has the idea of giving us the emotion and the different emotions of being as you're speaking. That's critical. If you're surprised, showing surprise. If you're sad, showing sadness, whatever that is. And pitch is the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, the movement of the voice from here. It's so exciting to, I don't know what I'm going to get excited. It's that sort of movement. And all these things work together, and they impact and they enrich the words that you're saying. The thoughts that you have are so much more powerful when you have these 7 areas developed. The other area, the gestures, the nonverbals, the gestures, the physical side, it makes up 50% of a speech. Think about that. When you're speaking, 50% of your speech, 50% of your speech is impacted by gestures, eye contact, facial expressions, and overall movement. And if you have these significantly involved in the process, it enriches your speech. So please understand why it's so valuable for you to set up your iPhone in such a way that it's a distance away, so that you can have a spot where you have a little podium and we can see you as you're speaking. See your hand movements, see your facial expressions, see your eyes. See everything with your gestures, eye contact, facial expressions. This is important. And so you need to think through, how do I do this? And why is that important? Gestures are critical. People watch your body. And as your hands move and they express anger, openness, sadness, whatever that is with your gestures, it impacts your audience. So we learn to use gestures that are meaningful. They're critical. They're necessary. Even in this picture, if you look at it, there's movement. There are gestures. This woman's just flipping a ball in the air. There's another ball that's coming across in the middle part there, and the other ball is in the hand or the palm of the other hand, and it's going to flip that hand, this ball that's in the one hand over to the other hand, and by then the other ball will be about where the middle ball is, and the middle ball will be down towards the hand. So there's this movement going on the whole time. You can see the movement. But please take a look at that picture carefully. Not only do you see the hands doing the juggling, but look at the eyes. They're looking kind of upward, a little over to the one side, but they're going to move over to make sure they're always looking at where all of the hands are, where the balls are, so they can actually make that work. Eye contact. Gestures are critical. Then eye contact, absolutely necessary. So do not sit there stoically and do not get yourself where your face is just the only thing I see, because that takes away my understanding your gestures and facial expressions. I'm watching everything about you as you speak. Eye contact, critical, necessary. This woman has her eyes placed right because she has the capacity to be able to see the whole circumference. She can see each ball as they're moving, and she needs to be able to make those slight movements with the eyes to engage every single one of the balls, to keep those balls going in the air. When you are speaking to an audience, please understand this. The place that the audience most looks at are your eyes. They look into your eyes. Now, there's some cultures where that's inappropriate. Looking down is appropriate. Then understand your eyes need to be doing what's culturally correct. But in public speaking, certainly in the North American setting, where your eyes go has impact. I was watching TV one day. It was a person who was giving the news. And you know that in a newsroom, there's the cameraman or a couple cameramen, and there's perhaps an audio person who's listening. And then there might be, if you're doing the news, it might be the sports person and the person who's going to give the weather. And that's about all that's in that room. But listen, thousands, no, hundreds of thousands, and in some cases, millions of people are all watching at the same time. And what your eyes do are important. I was watching the news once, and something happened in the room. And the eye man who's looking at the eye man, the newsman who's looking into the camera speaking. And this is what his eyes did, and his head moved ever so lightly. He's looking this because he's talking to us. All of a sudden he went. That took about, and you said the head moved just a bit. He went. That took about a second. In that second, something happened. I knew something had happened over there. Don't know what it was, but something got his attention, and it wasn't me. It's a distraction. You got to be aware of your eyes. People follow your eyes all the time. Your eyes are powerful communicators. I was at church, and I was involved in pastoral ministry in Vancouver. Dr. Howard Anderson was preaching. I was sitting on a little bench that's on the platform, and I'm I'm facing this way. Howard's over here preaching, facing the people who are that way, and the people are over here also. But I'm sitting there, and I can look at Howard, and I can slightly turn and see the audience. And so he's preaching, speaking away, and I happen to look out at the audience, and there are these two boys, and they're kind of fooling around, like sometimes boys will do. They're kind of hitting each other, and not making noise, but just movement, distracting people. Nobody was doing anything. And so I decided to see what I could do. I'm sitting in the bench, and so I just kind of moved my body a little bit like this so I could get to the edge of the chair, and I just turned myself ever so slightly. So there's the audience out there. Howard's over here speaking. And I just stared at the two boys. Didn't take my eyes off them. Just stared. Eventually, one of the boys happened to look over at me. and I locked into his eyes. I was looking at him. I didn't take my eyes off him. I just stared at him. And that boy froze. He just couldn't take his eyes off because I wouldn't take my eyes off him. He just froze. And as I was watching him, I was watching the other boy who hadn't yet figured out something's wrong. And he's still trying to tickle him. And all of a sudden he realizes my friend's looking at something. So he looks at his friend and he follows where his eyes are going and he realizes, oh. And he looked at me and I caught his eyes. I have both sets of eyes. I have both boys' sets of eyes. And I'm just looking at him. And I'm smiling, just looking at him. Finally, I count to 60, 1001, 1002, 1003, which works out to about a minute. I now have both boys are just staring at me and I'm staring back at them. They're not moving. And finally I go like this. What was I doing? I was just saying, don't do that anymore here. And they just sat there like this, staring at me. Finally, I looked away, and those boys sat quietly for the rest of the service. After the service, I had people come up to me and say, that was so neat. I saw you pull those boys together with just your eyes. Power of eyes. Listen, people are watching your eyes. Your eyes speak. So when you're speaking, you need to look at your audience. You need to engage your audience. That's important to do that. Facial expressions. Facial expressions. You need to hear this again. People are looking at your eyes, but they're looking at your whole face. Your face communicates. Is it communicating joy? Is it communicating sorrow? Is it communicating laughter? Is it communicating disgust? What is your face expressing? Because the people are reading your facial expressions. This is the area they most look at, is the whole face, and specifically they're looking at the eyes, but they're looking at the face. Be aware of your facial expressions. Are they appropriate for the moment? This senior pastor, the guy, he's named Dr. Howard Anderson, teaches that on the Acts campus. He's the dean of academics at Acts. Smiles a lot, all the time. Smiles a lot. And he did a funeral, his first funeral at the church that we were together at. And after the funeral, he said, hey, what did you observe about me and sharing? Is there anything I should be aware of? I said, yes. I said, your facial expression. He said, what are my facial expression? I said, this event was a funeral. Yeah. I said, do you realize, or did you realize when you spoke, you smiled the whole time? You have to think about that. It's a funeral, it's sad. Sometimes maybe showing a little sadness is acceptable. It's not that you can't smile at a funeral. I don't mean that, but what are people going to be thinking? You got to think about those sort of things. Even, wow, I will. Thanks. Our facial expressions say so much. We need to be aware of our facial expressions. I had to be aware. My wife told me, smile more, smile more. I have a personality. I'm very, very focused. And sometimes focus can mean I'm very focused looking at something or doing something, and I'm not thinking about what my face is saying. And people might say, oh, he looks grumpy or he looks angry. When all really I'm doing is I'm focusing on something. My facial expressions are important. When I was working at this church here in Abbotsford, I was there for a number of years, and my wife at the beginning kept saying to me, when you're out driving the car in the city here, you need to understand that the church that you go to, that you're a part of here now, and people know you, have a good part of 5,000 people. that means when you drive a car, there's a good chance you're going to drive by some people that will recognize you. You better realize that. If you're not smiling more, they're going to think you're a very unfriendly person. In public speaking, we need to think about the issue of how we come across, because after all, our audience, that's who it's about. When you're speaking, it is about your audience. It's not about you. You are the messenger. You are the message of the from the messenger. Be aware. Your facial expressions are so important. Whatever is appropriate, use that facial expression. The last area is the overall movement. The overall movement has the idea that deals with the concept of your speech needs to have movement in it. It needs to be going somewhere. You have an introduction. The introduction has 5 purposes. Gain, maintain audience attention. Relate the topic to your audience. Relate the topic to yourself and establish the right to speak on the topic. You need to be able to give your big idea. What's the central point of your speech, the purpose of it? And lastly, you need to project the organization. You need to forecast the organization of your speech. And that has movement. There's movement in that. Then there's the actual body of the speech as you're speaking. Your first, the two points or whatever number of points you have, you're sharing. It moves, and the introduction got the people there into the speech. Now your speech body just moves, and now you're coming to the conclusion. The conclusion has the idea of the brake lights, of doing an instant replay, of really reminding people what you're calling them to, and then ending in an upbeat manner. There's movement of the speech. It moves, it flows, but so does your body. You see, the overall movement is the flow of the speech itself, but then it is your flow. It is how you move. It is your gestures. It is your, not just your hand gestures, but your shoulder gestures, your neck gestures, your eye gestures, your eye contact. It's your facial expressions. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you whatever? Those need to be reflected in the facial expressions that you're using. Those are also movements in the speech. So you've got the movement of the organization of the speech that's going somewhere, and then you have yourself and your physical body as it moves forward in the speech. So you see, the nonverbal is very, very critical to the speech. And we need to remember that when we're speaking, we have the language, the words, and we're going to be looking at that later in the semester here. We have the paralanguage. That's your tone of voice and those areas that we looked at, body language, okay? And then how significant those are, the words, the paras language, the physical side. And then we need to remember, these are the paralanguage, the rate, the pauses, the volume, the enunciation, the fluency, the vocal variety, the pitch, all those things. And you say, man, that's a lot of things to remember. Yes, public speaking takes time to develop this. It doesn't happen overnight. Listen, I don't expect you to become a world-renowned public speaker just because you took this course and now you can go out and do it. It takes years of practice. Do you remember what I wrote in the syllabus? I wrote this, and I'm going to read it to you again because it's so important. It's from Plato. 7 years of silent inquiry are needful for one to learn the truth, but 14 in order to learn how to make it known to an audience. It takes a long time to know how to make it known to your audience. I have been teaching public speaking this is my 39th year I've been teaching this course. And I can tell you right now, I still have so much to learn about public speaking. It's not over. It's always ongoing. It never ends. And so you need to be able to take these areas and develop them over time. and you might think I got it pretty good. I'm on the next speech, I will be a little more picky, a little more focused. I'll be paying attention to all these areas to see how you're doing. So be aware. I have one last thing I want to say before I let you go. I'm going to come back to the area of eye contact here. I was asked this in the last class and I gave an answer and the students really appreciated it. I'm going to share it. Somebody said, where do my eye, like if I'm recording it, because that's how we have to do speeches versus being together, which I prefer. How do I do this? So where do I look? Do I look into the camera? Well, you can, but you also, if you're standing back far enough, you can be looking around as if you have an audience. You have a virtual audience, but what can you do to do that? Well, I have, and I won't pull them down. I have a huge giraffe I got from Africa. My daughter brought it, and actually the baby giraffe at the bottom here. I've got a couple of sailors statues stand this time. Okay, so when I give my speeches in this room, because that's when I have to do it, not public speaking, not in teaching, because I have to be here using PowerPoint. But when I'm doing it and it's being recorded for another organization, I will stand behind, in front of my black curtain of my closet here. I'll use an ironing board as kind of a podium, and then I'll put some towels up so that my notes can sit like this. And then I personally stick my notes into a 3-ring binder, the outline, I should say, into a 3-ring binder so I can turn it easily. I have my camera set up here, and I put my camera at about the same level of my eyes. Okay. I want people to see my whole person, or as much of my whole person as I'm speaking. But then the person said, well, do you just look into the camera? Like, how do you pretend that people there? And I said, listen, I got an idea that I use and it works. I use 2 giraffes. I use a couple of the men, and I have a window over to this side here. It's got a, I'm going to just turn you so you can see there. See, there's the window, and it's got a shelf there. And I put my my fake people there, my audience there. Now I'm losing this. Oh, why did I lose this? Anyways, I'm going to hold this for a moment and I'll put this together again. So it's there we are. And I put them up there, and I look at them as I'm speaking. I put them across the whole area, so that when I'm looking like this, as if I'm looking at a lot of people. You can create the image of eye contact. And if you create objects up there, you say, I don't have figurines. Okay, then put up some towels along the shelf there or wherever you're speaking. We're not going to see it. And pretend that each towel, different color or whatever you use, is a person. And if that's not quite enough, then pin a face on the towel. So you look into the eyes of the face, etc. Whatever you can do that helps. Okay. So I just wanted to make that as a suggestion when you do your next one. Now, this is the end of this week, and next week we meet again. I want to remind there's a couple people that still need to get their speeches in. I need to get those. So that's important. Please get those in. And to those who are watching via, because I'm recording this, please take note that I'll be sending this out shortly. You need to watch it, then you need to let me know that you watch it, because that means you're in attendance in class and I mark your attendance. Some of you are getting it, you're doing it well, and that's really helpful. So that's the end of today. Have a good weekend. We will see you next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.